Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about rear brake upgrades on an E60 M5. So this here is my own E60 M5, it's a 2009 model year, and these are the parts that we're going to use to do the rear brake conversion. So calipers wise, we'll be using the F chassis rear M Sport calipers. These are the two piston Brembos, commonly found on anything from 1 series to 4 series with the F chassis and the M Sport brake package, including M2, M3 and M4 cars. You can get these calipers with two different piston sizes. You can get them with 40mm pistons or 44mm pistons, but since we're using them on the M5, we've gone for the bigger one with the 44mm pistons. And this is how you can tell what size pistons they have in them. This particular set came off of 2020 model year M2 competition, I believe, with probably about 2,000 miles on the clock. So the calipers themselves are almost brand new, and so are the pads and everything else. With the caliper, the fitting kit and the condition is just pretty much new, and I was quite fortunate to get my hands on these. So yeah, we'll just bolt them straight onto the car. We will be using standard bolts that came with on the E60, so standard bolts that are used to secure your existing calipers can be reused with these ones, and the only thing we need to do is use a 2.5mm spacer washer. This is an M12 washer with 2.5mm thickness, and they will be used just behind the caliper, so between the caliper boss and the hub, just here, just to get the caliper sitting perfectly across the disc. We will also be changing the hoses to these braided ones here. This particular set came from Hell Performance, and they're of excellent quality. I always use Hell Performance hoses. You get them very quickly, the prices are very reasonable, and they come with rotating female unions, and this is very useful in a situation where you could have a seized male union coming off the car, and if you didn't have this on your hoses, it'd be very difficult to get around that issue. Finally, discs wise, we'll be using the original E60 M5 rear discs, 370mm by 24mm thick. This particular set here is the set that was on the car. I've taken them off a few days ago and I've had them re-skimmed. They're still good thickness, so they're still just over 23.5mm thick, but they did have a little bit of corrosion on them on the edges, and I've just had them re-skimmed to get them looking pretty perfect for the new pads, to have a nice and even contact surface to make contact with. On the left here we have an F8X M2, M3, M4 rear disc, and this disc is pretty much the same as the E60 M5 disc. The outer diameter is the same, the offset's the same, the thickness is the same, the handbrake cavity is the same. The only difference is the construction of the back face of the bell or of the hat. So on the E60 you've got a little channel here, and that's that lip there is really quite flush with the disc, with the back face of the disc, where on F80 this face here protrudes somewhat past the back face of the disc. So let me just show you what I mean. That step there is the difference between the two discs. If you wanted to, you could use F80 discs on the M5. They will bolt straight on. The only thing you will have to do is you will have to manipulate the back plate ever so slightly, because the back plate will come into contact with this little step here in some areas. So if you can just bend the back plate out of the way, you could also use these discs if you have access to them, and if you can get them, if they're more readily available than the E60 M5 discs. But in this case, I'll be using the original M5 discs because they just fit better. As far as the actual car is concerned, the only thing you need to do is trim the little corners off of the back plates, just because the caliper is quite a lot bigger. The new caliper is quite a lot bigger than the old one, and these little edges come into contact with the calipers, so just trim them off. There's a line here, so you can just follow that line straight. As you can see, my line isn't very straight, but there's plenty of space for the new caliper. And this is how the new caliper will sit, just like that. And now we can go ahead and clean the handbrake assembly, put the disc on, adjust the handbrake mechanism correctly, and install the caliper. We'll put the two little washers here to space the caliper, put the caliper on, attach the brake hose, and then we'll bleed the system, and we should be good to go. And there you go. Now everything is installed and assembled. The handbrake's been cleaned and adjusted properly. The caliper is now installed and torqued properly. Now let's just see whether you can see the little spacers just there. The brake hose is attached. My brake pipe was of course seized as I had anticipated, so this brake hose came in very handy with their rotating with its rotating female union, because I was able to just wind it on. I didn't have to rotate the whole caliper to get it to tighten up, so that came in very handy, and I don't have to replace my brake pipes because I didn't break them. And just the brake pad wear sensor to go back on, and we can put the wheels on, torque it all up, and take it out for a road test. And now I'm back from the road test, and I can report that all is well. The pedal feels great. The bite is not quite there just yet because the pads haven't bedded in properly just yet, but I have no doubt that they will very soon, in a few hundred miles, and the bite will improve. I did end up using the pads that came with the calipers, the original M pads that came off with the M2 that the calipers came off of. And as you can see there, the disc hasn't changed colour to the darker colour just yet because the pad hasn't deposited a thick enough layer onto the disc for it to start biting properly. Also, there is no air in the system. The bleeding was successful. I know these cars can be really quite tricky to bleed from time to time, but this one bled fine. I used the pressure bleeder, and I replaced brake fluid in the entire system with ATE Type 200.4 fluid. It's got slightly better, slightly higher boiling point than your standard brake fluid, but yet it's still .4, and it's still should only be changed every 2 years. So it's quite good. I use it quite a lot. Braided brake lines also make a huge difference to how the pedal feels. They just minimise the sponginess in the brake pedal, and they completely transform how the car feels under braking, and they just inspire confidence. So I definitely recommend doing braided lines whenever you're doing any brake work, any upgrade work, or you just want to improve your brakes ever so slightly. Certainly go for them. If you did need a set of Hell Performance braided brake lines, please get in touch. I do offer a bit of a discount on them, and I stock them pretty much all year round, and I can also get them made to order with pretty much next day delivery. So give me a shout if you want to save a few pounds. As far as doing this upgrade on non-M E60s and E6X cars, I cannot comment on that, so I don't know whether the hubs are the same, whether the layout's the same. It should in theory work because the front hubs are more or less the same on all E60s, so everything from 520 to the M5, so on the back they should in theory be the same, but again, I don't know. So if you want to try this out and if it works, by all means please do let me know whether it did work or not. Message me, send me a few pictures, I'd love to know. And yeah, I think on that note let's conclude. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this video as some of the others, and I'll see you all again soon.